All right, since that news article came out, I've gotten tons of questions, tons of emails, even calls asking, how do I get started? How do I push back? I'm sick of telemarketers. I'm sick of the scammers as well. I'm sick of these people that fall in between, all of them. How do I push back? And so this video is going to give you some of the tips I've experienced, some of the things I've learned, present it all here. One thing I need to say before anything else, I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to law school. I didn't pass the bar. Nothing I say should be construed as legal advice. If you have any legal questions, reach out to an attorney, because I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, that being said, if you're going down this path, the first thing you're going to want to do is sign up for the National Do Not Call Registry. There are some state ones, I'm not going to talk about that, but the National Do Not Call Registry can be found at donotcall.gov. Here's where you sign up. Here's also where you verify and find out if you've already been signed up. You aren't protected by this until 30 days after signing up. The law allows companies 30 days before they implement it. So if you haven't signed up yet, sign up, and before you have any kind of claim, generally in violation of the Do Not Call Registry, you've got to wait 30 days. Second thing, Tape a Call Pro. So I've got this. This is what I use to record calls. I think it's great organization, easy to use. Download it, play with it, and look up your state laws about recording calls, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to start recording calls in situations that are illegal. Texas is where I'm at, is one-party consent, so I feel very comfortable recording calls. There's some legal issues there. That's what I'm going to say. Look them up, do your own research on that. Now, when you get calls, you need to engage them. Be careful with what you say. If they start asking for social security numbers and bank account numbers, don't do that. Understand too that there is some amount of risk here, right? It is really hard to tell the difference between people who just want to get your information to send it as a lead or just trying to get you on the phone, and people that are wanting to steal your identity, things like that. So be cautious, but when you start out just engaging them and asking them about the product. And what you'll find is that in a lot of scenarios, you'll be able to just ask questions and show interest and find out who the company is from that. So let me give you an example by explaining how this works. So car warranty company A, they want to sell their car warranties. They realize there's a lot of legality around telemarketing. And whether they care about that or not, what they're going to do is they're going to hire a third party from outside the country to violate all the rules on their behalf. That way when they go to court, they can say, oh, it's a third party, it wasn't us. The reality is they know. I think there's a pretty good argument that if you're hiring somebody outside of the country to do telemarketing, you know that they have no reason to expect that they would follow US laws. So you've got two parties here. You've got the actual telemarketing company and then the people that have hired them for whom they're making calls on their behalf. This person's going to call you. They're going to spoof the phone number. They're not going to identify who they are. And they're going to ask if you're interested. The hope is you don't pretend to be interested, because when you start pretending to be interested, they're going to connect you to the real company over here. And the real company over here, they're going to have to disclose themselves at some point. Use caution. I will say that I've gone as far as I will purchase products just so I can find out who it is, and then I will call and cancel my order. And what I've found in those situations is sometimes often you run into companies that they'll use 2 or 3 different names before you actually find the company name. So you want to just start out along this adventure just asking questions, just expressing interest, just doing that. Be careful if they use things like, hey, you're agreeing to be contacted, blah, blah, blah. I actually think that most of those disclosures that they'll use aren't valid because they don't use real names, but that's a legal issue beyond the scope of this video. Once you start doing that, start keeping a log. So I do this in Excel. Don't make it exhausting. Know yourself, know if you're actually going to keep up with it, and manage the log based on that. So the minimum is you're going to want to write down when the call was made, what the number showed up on caller ID, and some notes on the call. So I have a pretty extensive tracker. I would say a good tracker says when, time, date, number called, probably a category, insurance, car warranties, whatnot, and then whether it was recorded or not. That's it. Maybe even name used, because when you go in and organize the recording of these calls, you're going to want to reference that. That's the kind of documentation you're going to want. Start off doing that. Once you start to get calls from these companies, then go to their Better Business Bureau profile, go to their Google Maps profile, and try and engage them. Do this by submitting complaints and saying, hey, your telemarketer called me. I would like to know who you paid to call me. I would like to know where you got my information from. Give them a review and say, hey, these guys appear to be hiring telemarketers to call me in violation of the do not call list. It may feel like that doesn't matter. I will tell you, I did this for years and I was so frustrated because I felt like it didn't matter at all. Now I can go back and in more than one case, I have used other people's complaints. I've used my own complaints. One of the biggest cases, I used a Twitter account and a tweet somebody had used. It's important because when you establish liability for the telemarketers, the main company's liability for the telemarketers, one of the things to consider is, did they know or should they have known this was happening? And when you have a history of complaints of it happening, it's really hard to stand in front of a judge and a jury and say, oh, we didn't know. How could you have not known when people already complained? And so one, you're starting to engage and you're giving them an honest chance to correct the action, which is important. And then two, if they're not correcting it and it's a repeat offense, you are equipping people like myself, you're equipping regulators, you're equipping real lawyers to go and have a strong case against them. And companies take note of this because an intelligent and an ethical company is going to see that and they're going to act on it. I will say, start with those things and learn. And what you're going to find is similar commonalities. You're going to start to realize who's a telemarketer, who's a scammer, and you're going to start to feel more comfortable. Also, if you're doing this, I would recommend you sign up for something like NortonLifeLock Security, one of these credit monitoring agencies, because they are gathering a file on you. And oftentimes, the people doing the telemarketing, the people doing the scamming, they're not far apart. They can be under the same building or a part of the same organization. Everything I've seen, they are building a file on you. And so you're going to want to watch and monitor your credit real closely. The last tip I'll get for starting this, do some research on cases. Do some researches on cases for TCPA. Do some actual reading on the TCPA law. Look up a Wikipedia summary. Look up some legal summaries for companies and start to learn about that. There's some great reading out there. And then lastly, read about what small claims is like in your state. Small claims court is dictated differently by each state. So some states, like Texas, you can go all the way up to $20,000 in claims in small claims court. Other cases, I think other states are as low as $3,000. What your state is and what are the laws around that? Is discovery allowed? How long do they have to respond? Things like that. A lot of it, you'll figure it out as you go, but you want to read and equip yourself with as much knowledge as you can. This is to start out learning about them, learning about the companies, addressing them. Once you do that, you can start sending demand letters. These don't have to be super formal, but I would just simply say this. You called me in violation of the Do Not Call registry. I want to know where you got my information and if you had what makes you think that you had an exception to do that. Ask that, see what they say, give companies a chance to respond. That's my advice to starting out. I'll post some more videos. As always, remember, it's not about the money and stay humble. Thanks, guys.